since there aren't a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to come today because of the holiday. So want to make sure that we have this for people available.
So are any of you guys the people who'd asked about sheep breeds and types of wool? I know it wasn't Kathy.
Well,
I
I
may have
certainly
heard
But I would
about
love to
them.
hear.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned I want to
Okay.
start learning about
I
them.
would-
Yeah, me too.
Because I was just trying to figure out kind of where to start, or how general, or how specific, or if people had specific things they were thinking about or looking for.
I'm just exploring. I had a lot of fun at the Frederick Fiber Festival recently. Got a bunch of different fiber, but I've got so many other things on my plate. I've yet to attempt to spin any of it. But at least I get to touch it and get an idea of what it is I'm looking at now.
Mhm. I'm pretty good about reading about things in books. Like I've already started to kind of learn about at least the like different types of sheep breeds, but I think what would be helpful is to know what's available here and how to find that, how to find what's available here.
Yep.
One way I learned
Should I-
about, hello? Oh,
So who was speaking? Somebody had a question?
yes. Well, no, I didn't have a question. This is Kate. I was just going to say, I learned about the different breeds because I needed to focus when I went to fiber festivals, and I began collecting examples of fiber from any, all the different breeds of sheep and goats and all of that. So that's how I learned.
Awesome. So here's what our agenda is going to be for today. So Gretchen is going to talk to us about, types of wool, and about, again, what's around here. I'm going to take you through our website to show you the resources that we have, and a couple of books that I think are awesome resources. And then we'll open it up like we did last time for people to say where they're at in their project and any questions. That's how we figured out today's program, was because a lot of people had said last time that they were interested in knowing more about wool. So we were responding to that. And so each time, I think if we know that there's questions that people have, then we can put those up as like a little mini program on these meetings. So with that, I will introduce Gretchen. She's the owner and founder of Solitude Yarn Company in Loudoun County. And she has great breed specific yarns. And so take it away, Gretchen.
Okay. There are probably 1,200 sheep breeds in the world. There are lots of different sheep breeds, and not very many people are going to learn all of that stuff. I mean, one, you learn particularly when you're working with that type of wool and it's in your hands, and some of its properties are just obvious to you. But to start in the fiber shed and look around at what's available, the way I started was because I started raising sheep, and I was looking for sheep, what breed I wanted to raise. And so I had joined some groups, the Loudoun Valley Sheep Producers, and went to things like the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival, where you can see sheep and you start doing research. But at that point, I don't think anybody talked about types of wool. It was later that I sort of started to realize that a number of breeds had very similar characteristics and are put in categories or types. And when you're using wool and looking for wool for a project, it's really helpful to start to know what type of wool you might want. And then you can start to look for the breed. Not everybody agrees on what types there are. Some people use 4 categories, some people use 5, some people use 6. At Solitude Wool, we tend to use 5. And 4 of those types are pretty well represented in our fiber shed. We'll go from finest up to coarsest. And the way these breeds are categorized is frequently by the type, the wool and the characteristics. So some of the key things about different fleeces that are being measured and grouped are the length of the fiber, the staple length, the diameter of the fiber, how coarse or fine it is, the staple pattern. Most wool, not all, but most wool has crimps or bends in it that give it elasticity, and they have different patterns. Double coated or single coated, there's a number of different characteristics. The first category is the fine wool categories. And this is breeds like Merino that Kathy, who's with us, raises, and Martha Polke raises, Cormo, Targhee, Rambouillet, breeds with very fine wool that is not scratchy, that is very refined and all even across the body of the sheep, from the neck to the butt. The fleece should all be very uniform. And partly because it's so uniform and because it's fine, it's not scratchy. You can wear it next to your skin. So that is the type of wool that you would want for first layers, long underwear, for if you were going to knit a fine sweater that you were going to wear without something underneath it. Different very fine things. The downside of fine wools are they're not super strong fibers. So they're not hard wearing. That's not what you want in an outerwear sweater usually. It's not what you want in a rug or often a blanket. You want something that is a little harder wearing. There are not very many fine wools in our fiber shed, and the people who are raising them are usually raising them because of the fine wool. These are usually fiber people who are raising them primarily for the fiber. So they usually use a lot of their wool, already have good customers. This is the wool that gets the highest price of all the different types of wool in the world. And so it's not an abundant resource here. Fine wools are mostly raised on the West Coast and in Texas, where it's much drier. The humidity and heat in the summer here are not particularly fun things for fine wool sheep. The next category is down or down type breeds. Those sheep are pretty plentiful around here. Dorset, Shropshire, Suffolk, Hampshire, Southdown. Those are all breeds that are usually raised for meat because the animals grow fast. So it tends to be a more common breed. but it has a cool character in its fiber, which is, and it's pretty fine. It's pretty soft, not scratchy. It's very short on the sheep. If after a whole year's growth, it might only be 3 inches, sometimes less. Glen Forest is a down type breed. But the cool thing about down type breeds is they grow what is called robust crimp. It grows in a spiral, it just goes every which way and disorganized. And because of that, it's like a whole bunch of springs all together, and it doesn't compress. It just pops back, and it makes this wool fabulous for socks, for things that you really want cushion. And it also makes it very washable. I don't think we really know why. We don't scientifically know why wool felts in the first place, and we certainly don't know why down wools don't felt, but we think it's just the spring. But it makes this wool much more washable, even machine washable, than other wools. It resists felting. The next type is medium wool. And there's a lot of medium wools in our fiber shed. And in fact, back pre-Civil War, medium wool tuna sheep was one of the most popular breeds around. There were tons of them, but they almost got wiped out in the Civil War because people ate them all. But Tunis, Montadale, Corriedale, what are some other medium? Fin sheep are medium. They're very versatile. You can use the medium wools for almost anything. It's still really pretty soft. It's really a decent length. Most medium wool sheep grow a big fleece, so it's abundant. And if you find a farm raising it, if they have any sensitivity to wool, or if they know you want it and they can concentrate a little bit, you can get some really wonderful fleeces that you can use for a huge variety of projects. And if somebody finds Corriedale, let me know, because I'm looking. And then the next type of wool going up is a little coarser still. It is long wools, often called lustrous long wools. Most of them came out of England originally. They're very shiny. They are, as you'd suspect, long and easy to spin. Coarser, good for outerwear, sweaters, great for blankets. It's often used in upholstery and rugs, carpets. And between the different breeds of sheep, you're going to get some that are closer to medium in coarseness and some that are very coarse and very shiny and have very little elasticity. So Romney, Blueface Leicester are on the finer end of the long wools. Then and Border Leicester and Coopworth. And then you start getting up into the Cotswold and Leicester long wool, Teeswater, Wensleydale. You're not going to find many Teeswaters or Wensleydales around here. And I don't even see many Lincolns, but there are lots. Romney is everywhere. Romney can be found easily. And Border Leicester usually. One of the sad things about the fiber shed is that you're working with a breed and you go back the following year and the farm sold all those sheep and they're gone. You can't find them. So that's happened to us on a Shropshire yarn we had. It's happened to us on Corriedale. It's happened to us on Coopworth. trying to think of what else, but it's very sad. So people buying wool will help keep those sheep at those farms. And the last category that we use are primitive breeds or double coated. And there are quite a few in our fiber shed. There's a number of farms that have Icelandics, quite a few that have caracal. There is some Shetland around. There's not, I don't know of tons here, but there is Shetland. And primitive type wools have, like the original sheep, they have a long outer coat, and rain and weather just roll off the outside. That keeps them protected. And then they have a down undercoat. And sometimes different sheep breeds might have 4 or 5 types of lengths of fiber in one fleece. They can be very different. So that there's a big range, and like primitive wools are used for yurts and Persian carpets, and they felt fabulously great for shoes. They have no elasticity. But that's a specialty wool for certain things. You're not going to use it for most clothing unless it's like felted mittens to ride the tractor when you're snow plowing or something. So one of the cool things that I thought when we started Solitude Wool is and I think this is true of most of the Northeast, we have small farms, and the farms are getting smaller. I mean, what used to be a small farm might be 200 sheep. And today, 20 sheep sounds like a decent sized flock. But people in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic are tending to raise lots of different breeds of sheep. They're often doing it to raise breeding stock and sell breeding stock. So there are a lot of people on the show circuit. Often they will belong to breed specific groups. So you can find them by Googling a breed and their association, and they will have lists of members. They're often in this area. I think there are a lot of people that are members of the Livestock Conservancy. They are doing this to help preserve breeds and conserve breeds that could go extinct because they're just not in the mainstream these days. And you can find lists of things on the Livestock Conservancy of different providers. There are a lot of local groups too. This is the last printed directory from the Loudoun Valley Sheep Producers, which was 2013 and 14, but the directory is online. And there's the Frederick County Sheep Producers. You could find them online too, and they'll list them by their breed. And then of course, the Maryland Sheep Breeders has a great website. And I'm sure as you start to go out, most places will have breed associations that you can look for. Do you have any other questions or something? I don't know if that helps or not, but you can find some general resources on the Solitude Wool website. We have about as honed down an explanation of the different types of wool and examples of breeds on our website. So that is easy to find. And a couple of books, this is Clara Parks, The Knitter's Book of Wool. And she has also a very simplified explanation of the types of wool and just general information about wool that I think is the easiest to consume. And I've never heard Clara Parks say a wrong word. She's always perfect. And then there's the Bible, which is the Fleece and Fiber Source Book, which has a ton of information about breeds, specifically towards knitting, weaving, and how to use the wool. And this is by Deb Robeson and Carol Acarius, and they don't use types of wool at all. They categorize by where in the world they come from. And then there's the easy version of the Fleece and Fiber Source Book, which is the field guide. So this one is probably a little easier. And I'm trying to think if there are some other resources, but if anybody has questions or things, I have trouble. It's not like I don't know everything at all. And when I start to look for something, we have been wanting more Corriedale since we lost the farm that made it. We've now lost the Coopworth, and I've talked to some people who have Coopworth, but they're using all their fleece. They don't want to sell it to us. So it's not easy. And one of the things I may be unstable. I may be losing my internet here, but just by asking and by being interested, you will really help the shepherds, the farms, pay attention to their wool. And I just say some shepherds know a lot about wool and a lot about their wool, and some shepherds know almost nothing. So don't assume because the shepherd told you it's absolutely correct, and don't assume that the fleece they show you is a great fleece. You have to be a little suspicious. But so any questions or
I have one,
thoughts?
Gretchen. I have a question.
Mhm.
I am thinking about spinning some yarn for a baby. And I am wondering if down, in particular, perhaps a finer down wool would be appropriate because it wouldn't have to be handled so carefully. It could be thrown in the washing machine and that kind of thing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. In fact, we just introduced a yarn, Clun Forest Light, which is 100% Clun Forest. We didn't add any nylon. Blending nylon into wool does help its washability, and we wanted a washable yarn partly for baby things. And we made it just totally out of Clun, and baby blanket was the first thing we made out of it. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So Clun is good for that. Dorset, particularly if you can get somebody raising Dorset, because Dorset often has some pretty good length to it. I think it's pretty easy to spin. You probably don't want Shropshire because Shropshire is the blackface sheep, and it often has black fibers in its fleece. Southdown would be great.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask it?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I know of Hog Island sheep. Are there any other sheep that are specific to Virginia?
The one, I mean, I think of Tunis as the mid-Atlantic colonial sheep. The Bay of Tunis gave George Washington, I think, 3 Tunis rams or something. But anyway, Tunis became the hip breed in colonial times, and up until the Civil War. So I think of them as very much a local, and now they call them American Tunis. They're
Mhm.
not the same as the Tunis you would see in Tunisia. I'm trying to think if there's another. I mean, some of the breeds that have been around here for a long time, the Leicester long wools that they have at where not Mount, is it
Williamsburg.
Mount Vernon? Yeah.
Williamsburg.
We're at Williamsburg, yeah. But Tunis really kind of got its start here. Hog Island are, I think you have to be a special fiber person to love Hog Island. It's not my favorite.
Thank you.
I
I have
have
a
a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Mhm.
You go, and then I'll go.
okay. Okay. I want advice about for those of us who have never bought a fleece before, like what would be the best avenue to go about that? Like going to a festival, I'm not sure when they happen typically, or like, I don't know if I know what I was talking about enough to like approach a shepherd and say, can I have this?
Mhm. Well, chances are if you find a shepherd, and we could do something sometime and do something even on Zoom for looking at a fleece, but there aren't any. A fiber festival is a great way to do it. There aren't any really until the first one will be Maryland Sheep and Wool, and that's not till the first weekend in May. And some people shear twice a year. Martha Polke, I know, shears in the spring and the fall. She doesn't shear twice a year. She shears half of her sheep in the spring and half of her sheep in the fall, because they get a full year's growth. And she could help. A lot of shepherds who do know what they're doing can sort of walk you through it. But one of the things, you want to use your senses. When they call it the hand of a fleece, and it doesn't matter whether it's a fine fleece or whether it is a coarse double-coated fleece. There's something about putting your hand in fleece when it's from a healthy animal that's been raised well. You can feel that in the fleece. It just feels good. And it shouldn't stink. You don't want it to smell of mildew. It might smell like a ram a little bit, but that's acceptable, but it shouldn't have a bad mildewy smell. You don't want it needs to be dry. You don't want it to feel crunchy. That means the fleece is dried out. Some of it, it's hard to know when you haven't touched a lot of fleece what feels good and what feels not good. And the other thing you can do, if you're buying a fine wool fleece, and also with down breeds, one of the things you want to do is you want to test it for breaks. If a sheep in its lifespan, so it's growing, the fleece is growing out of it from its skin every day of its life. And if that sheep gets sick, has a fever, is stuck someplace, something happens that it doesn't get to eat for 24 hours, you get a little thin spot in the fleece. And if a sheep is sick for 2 or 3 days, it's really a noticeable break. Sometimes you can even see it. But what you can do is you can take a little bit, one lock or portion of a lock, and hold the two ends between your fingers and like pop it back and forth in front and bite close to your ear, and you can hear it twang. And if it has a nice bright twang to it, the first couple pops, it's a good solid fleece. If it sounds like sort of a dull thud, and it might just pull apart. And you're more likely to find that where it would pull apart and really break on you in a fine wool fleece, because if you have a tiny diameter and that gets thinner, obviously that weakness shows up. On a long wool sheet, you can have a thinner spot and yank it and it's still not going to break, and that wouldn't be so bad. But yeah, and you want it to be fairly clean. There's always going to be some vegetation unless you're buying a covered fleece specifically, marketed to hand spinners. A lot of vegetation and a lot of dirt is going to come out when you wash it. Sheep live a dirty life, but it comes out. I don't know if that helps at all, but, I think there are probably online videos, I bet, on how to skirt a fleece or how to evaluate a fleece.
I would also
Okay.
say too, that if you go to a fiber festival like Maryland, they have volunteers that are all throughout the fiber sale, and they will be really happy to help you. So if you say, I'm looking for a fleece to be able to do a baby blanket, let's say, and then they can direct you to where you should go, and they'll help you, look through that fleece. They don't want you to be opening it up and looking at it yourself, but they will help you with that. And they're pretty knowledgeable. They have followed around the judge, and so they know what the fleeces are about at the sale.
Cool.
Teresa, you had a question.
I did. I noticed, Gretchen, on your website, you list yarns, breeds, and you mentioned whether or not they're good for weaving or not. I was wondering if you could speak a little more about which fibers might be better, or if it's simply that you're talking about yarns that you guys have already spun that may or may not be good for warp yarns.
Yes. We're mostly on the yarn comparison chart.
Mm-hmm.
That is talking specifically about those yarns and if they have been spun so they're strong enough for warp.
Okay.
And I think there are a couple yarns on there that I say are acceptable for weft, but
Mhm.
not really strong enough for warp.
Okay.
But I'm trying to think of any wools that you wouldn't use for weaving, and I don't think I can think of any. It's more the character of the yarn.
Your yarn. Okay. That's kind of what I figured,
How
but I
it's
wasn't
spun, yeah.
entirely sure because I'm new to the
Mhm.
spinning world, and self-taught with the weaving. So I'm still playing around.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, I think it just, because in weaving, you can do anything from super fine, careful, soft stuff up to rugs. And there's going to be a wool for all projects in between.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Mhm. Kathy, do you want to add anything?
Well, you kind of covered it. The biggest thing is if people have an opportunity to go out and visit farms that actually have the fiber, you can instantly tell by the living situations. If you see pallets used for fencing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'd walk away because those people are experimenting and they're not serious. They might have crossbred their animals. And sometimes the care isn't what it could be, because if they're jury rigging everything that they do, you have to wonder if they're feeding them enough, treating them, and things like that. And the other thing is that when you go to a farm, and I'm not talking about me specifically, because I went this route. I went to check out Border Leicester sheep. I don't know if you say Border Leicester, Border Leicester, or the flip. But
I think it's
anyhow,
usually Border Leicester here.
Leicester, okay, because out west they said Leicester, and I just always, so I'm afraid to say it because I'll say it wrong. Anyhow, I started with them as a breed of sheep because, oh my gosh, they're so big, and that everybody raved about how spinnable their hair was. Well, these people, a lot of the places that had them were out in California, and yeah, they have a drought, but it's not that much of a drought. Well, I bought them and took them to Arizona. And number one, the animals couldn't tolerate the heat. Number two, they're really a dual breed sheep. They're raised for both meat and fiber. And their first fleece, you might be able to wear, but I can assure you, you're not going to wear the second and third. So don't make a sweater that has a turtleneck because it'll be against your neck and you won't want to wear it. But the other thing that I
Hey,
kind of
Millie.
over time is that the warmer it is outside, the finer your fiber needs to be. Because I can wear a fairly coarse wool when it's cold out, but the minute it starts warming up, you can't wear it anymore. So, but that happens with every breed. Even people who are wearing the nicest, finest merino are going to say, ooh, it's a little scratchy if it's really hot outside, because the fibers expand. And when those fibers expand, even the softest thing against your skin is not going to feel good. So, but anyhow, I went from the Border Leicester, which I decided, you know, they didn't even produce 3 pounds of fiber. They, in my opinion, they were totally a meat breed. So I sold them off to somebody and I experimented with Shetlands. Well, Shetlands are really small and they produced about the same amount of fiber as the Border Leicester. And mine, because the person raising them was kind of playing games with stuff, and she's one of these jury rig kind of things. It was a very interesting place to go. She had Shetlands that were primitive and Shetlands that were modern. And the modern version are really nice because there's no guard here to worry about pulling out. It's not itchy and it's not scratchy. It kind of has a cottony texture to it. So if you like the idea of cotton kind of things, that's really nice. And it is a big poofy yarn. You can spin it and you think it's all the same size. Well, when you wash it, it's amazing how texture pops out in different places. And from the Shetlands, I went to Rambouillet, and I was thinking, wow, these are really big animals, and the fleeces are over 5, 10, 12 pounds, which is awesome. But I was still out in Arizona at the time, and they really didn't take the heat very well. I mean, you could shear them at the last possible moment so that they could get through the summer, but even so, it was too much. And then my experiments went from the Rambouillet, because actually the only reason I had Rambouillet is because there was a breeder who had them, and every time he had triplets, the third one, he always took away from it, and he'd been trying to bottle feed them. Well, he was using store-bought milk, and store-bought cow's milk will not raise you a good sheep. And so they would always kind of, you know, make it till about a month, and then they would go downhill and they would die. So he started giving me his Rambouillet, and that's how I got the babies, because I used my goat's milk to raise them, and they were great. And then from there, this same friend who gave me the Rambouillet, he's a judge for sheep and he's traveled different places. Anyhow, he came back from a trip in California one time, and he told me, you know, you're raising big animals, so you might as well have the best stuff. And he basically said the best stuff was merino sheep. So I told him, okay, well, go and bring me 2 home, a male and a female, so I can see what happens. And they didn't like the heat in Arizona that much, but they tolerated it. And then we decided to move to the East Coast. And that's when I kind of thought, well, we brought 100 here, and I got up to around 150 or so. And my husband told me he was tired of chasing Shetlands, because Shetlands do not follow the grain of the bucket with the grain in it. Because they're a more primitive breed, they scatter quicker. They're harder to control. A lot of people get them because they're small in size. Well, yeah, they're small in size, but that also means they're very agile. And if you can't or don't want to spend an hour chasing them down. It's kind of, you know, counterproductive. So when we moved here, my merinos started doing wonderfully. My Shetlands did wonderful too, but my husband didn't want to chase them anymore. So I took 2 years and I crossbred the merinos and the Shetlands just as a scientific experiment, really. And they had gorgeous fleeces. They spun easy, great for a beginner. Merino wool, unless you're buying the commercial stuff, you got to work at it to get it nice and even. So, you know, if you've been spinning, you know, the Ashland Bay merino or some other kind of commercial merino, you are not prepared to spin real merino that comes off of a sheep and doesn't go through that processing. Because the merino, before they sell it, when it's through the commercial things, it is run through chemicals, number one, to get rid of all of the vegetable matters. The second thing that they do is as they card it, they stretch the fibers out. And when they stretch those fibers out, it's kind of like, not necessarily that they steamed it, but when you start spinning that fiber, you'll be looking at it and thinking, oh, this is so nice and this is so even. Well, the proof is in the wash. Because when you get that merino wet, all of a sudden you've got a bunch of texture that you didn't expect. And it's because the crimp in it all of a sudden shows back up. So you don't have a true vision of what you're spinning when you're spinning the commercial roving. So I always kind of say, see if you can find a roving and then see if you can spin it. Not raw, you need to wash it and, you know, card it somehow yourself and see what you think, because some fibers work really well one way and some work well the other ways. When you send something off to be carded by a mill, it's either going to be, there's 2 ways that it comes back. It's either a top or I can't remember what they call the other.
Roving, top or roving.
Okay, top or roving. And, you know, when you're ordering it up and stuff, they just call all of it roving until you start getting specific. And then they say, yes, this is top and that's roving kind of thing. So they don't, you know, when I sell mine is all roving because it is roving. So, I mean, those are some things I'd say consider. You know, I've been doing this long time, really long time. I don't want to age myself, but I'm always trying out. I have tried out lots and lots of fleeces that, you know, the animals didn't make the cut, so I didn't buy them.
Yeah. Well, Gretchen, I know that you are expecting company, so I just wanted to thank you for sharing. And I wanted to share a couple of other of our resources and like take people through that. So thank you so much for helping us out here.
If anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to email me. Happy to answer them. And I will say goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm going to take you guys to our website to just kind of go over basically what Gretchen was talking about is like some of, you know, our local resources. So this is from our page that's called Sustainable Cloth Farm to Home and Closet Resources. And so we have on here links to the various breeder associations in the area. And so what happens is if you go to like Frederick Sheep Breeders, then you can go to their membership page. And let's see, where is it? Come on, there it is. Taking a little bit to load it. And then it will go through this. This one is set up alphabetically, but it will show you what kind of animals they have, like this one, Finn sheep, Gotland sheep, and you can go all through that. And they'll tell you a little bit about their farm and how to get a hold of them. There's also the Loudoun County. This is the Loudoun County breeders. And so this one again is alphabetical, not as much information, but if they do have a specific breed, they will put it up there. And then they also have, like, if you look at this Frakesmont, I don't know them, but so they have Clun Forest, and then it looks like they have you can buy breeding stock, you can buy meat, you can buy something in a bag, which I don't know, knitted items and yarn. So they will have that. And here, like Head Spring Farm. So she has a bunch of different, this is Bridget's farm. She's also a little mill as well. So she has a lot of different kinds of sheep there. So and she's really very knowledgeable as well. And then I wanted to show you, if I can hopefully do this, is even the Eastern Angora Goat and Mohair Association. So if you're interested in knowing more about goats, they also have their membership directory on here. And this one goes by state. So not everybody that is a member here would be part of our fiber shed. And not everyone who has goats is a part of this association. For instance, Kathy, you're not on here. I'm not on there. Karen of Avalon Springs Farm is not on here. So there are other breeders around that are part of our fiber shed. So does anybody have any questions about how to get a hold of these kind of resources? No? Okay. And we also have like a skills area, how to connect with the different guilds in our area as well. So I think what we could do then is to go around and kind of give everybody updates of, what have you doing so far? How's your project going? Have you decided on what you're doing? And do you have any further questions for us? And I like the way we did it last time, where when you're done, you can pick somebody else to talk. I thought that was kind of a nice way to do it. So Kirsten, do you want to start?
Sure. So I am working on my first project, which is this. I'm developing a pattern for, well, actually a freeform pattern for a sweater from the top down. It's a cowl sweater, and I'm knitting it from homespun Finn sheep that I sourced from a farm that's about as close to me as I could find. So I am starting with working with yarns that I dyed with fresh leaf indigo. And as I go along, I'm sort of keeping a journal, and every time I knit, it's sort of almost like a little bit of a conceptual piece, I guess. Every time I knit, I just do a little bit of writing, and I have a jar of black walnut ink or dye, you could call it, that I made from 3 walnuts from my own yard. And every time I finish knitting, I take the next piece of yarn that I will be knitting on my next session, and I put it into the black walnut dye in a bowl and let it sit until just overnight. Then I let it dry, and then when I pick up my knitting, I begin by knitting that little piece of black walnut. So there's sort of a record of the times that I've knit built into the cowl. So it has these little stripes of black walnut that mark the passage of time. So that's my first piece. And then at the same time, I'm trying to figure out how, because I have a tendency to get spread all over the place. So I'm thinking of building a journal that's really specific to this instead of keeping it in my ongoing journal, so that you don't scroll through many pages and find the entry. And then the other thing that I'm doing is keeping notes on the life cycle of the woad plants in my garden. and testing out the pigment in small dye pots. So at the moment, I have like October, November, and I just do poundings of the leaf to see how much pigment is in the woad going into winter. And because the woad plants in my garden are first year woad plants, they still have a lot of pigment. Next year they'll go to seed and they won't have much pigment. So I did a planting for next spring. So hopefully I'll have some good pigment, which I hope to then use to develop darker colors in the cowl sweater. So that's where I'm at, and I'm dreaming of other, like this is the first piece, as I said, and I'm sort of dreaming about other pieces that might come together to create like a whole ensemble, or just a, something that that I could wear on different parts of me that would represent our fiber shed. So I pick Cindy.
Well, I am part of the Weavers Guild of Baltimore Fiber Shed Study Group. So this is a bunch of us that are making a garment over the course of the year. And at this point, we have sourced our wool, we have washed it, and we're in the process of carding and beginning to spin. And there are like 6 spinners, I think. We probably had one more person that was carding, and then she dropped out. These are wools from Peggy Howell's farm up in Carroll County. They are, I guess they're 50% Corriedale because it's a Corriedale ram. She said that the remainder of the ewes have some Romney, and I don't remember what else. So they're, a nice medium wool. One is light gray, one is very dark brown, and one is white. So that's what we're doing at this point. It's really fun, and I am enjoying learning this through a group of people, or with a group of people, as opposed to trying to figure it out on my own. It's helpful. I would like to be able to, once my portion is done, I'm one of the spinners and washers of the wool and carders of the wool. Once the spinning is finished, my job is basically done, and then I will go on to process something else that I have sourced here, maybe another one of Peggy's fleeces. So that's what I'm doing. Thank you. And Teresa, how about you?
All right. For the record, I'm a new member of the Weavers Guild of Baltimore. And I don't know if you were the one that originally posted that, but whoever did posted this, I'm very grateful because this is a lot of fun for me. I didn't feel my skills were up to joining, but if you guys are doing anything in person, that I need to contact you guys through the Weavers Guild, because I'd love to come at least see what y'all are doing. Anyway, so this past month, I've had a project on my loom that has nothing to do with this, and it's been really difficult, and it's finally tied on. So I'm hoping it'll get off my loom this week, so I can start testing around and playing with different yarns. I went off, I think just last week, to Painted Sky Alpaca Farm and Mill because I wanted to check them out. And I bought some fingering weight alpaca yarn that they grew and milled right there. So at a minimum, I'm going to make a scarf out of that. So that will be perhaps a first project. My hope is to eventually find some way to make a very nice shirt for myself out of wool. But since I'm kind of jumping in, knowing a lot of nothing, I'm still trying to figure out what kind of set, what kind of yarn, whether I want to spin it, whether I want to buy it. But at a minimum, I'm going to have a scarf made by October. So that's really all I have. Kathy?
Thanks. I have been working on the slip stitch pattern that I talked about, and you really can't tell how big it is because it's on a needle and the stitches are pretty tight, but this is a slip stitch. The way I was working it before was back and forth, which I realized all of a sudden I had to rewrite the pattern if I was gonna work in the round, because it doesn't exactly work like that. So, so that's making progress. It's gonna be 20 by 58 inches. And it's going to be a cowl that wraps around the neck twice with the option of pulling it up over the head. I've done something kind of like that before, but the pulling up over the head was never long enough. So now I'm gonna really make it long enough. And I always have a lot of different projects going on at the time. So now I'm kind of, usually every year I make a weighted blanket. This year I've decided to do hats because I have a whole lot of natural colored fiber that doesn't really sell well until you've made something out of it. So this is natural colored wool and mohair. It's not the nicest and the softest, but the thing is that when it's cold, you can wear it. So that's, and while we've been talking here, I've been working on another one. And the thing to know is that I try to make things reversible, because then you get two kind of looks and two kind of uses. So this one right here is the side that you can see as you're crocheting it. But if you turn it outside, inside out, when you're working with an art yarn, the art yarn always falls on the back side. So you have one side that's kind of funky and you have one side that's kind of normal. And so that one's almost done, but it's my mindless thing when I'm talking on Zoom or something like that. I have done some stuff on my cranberry bohemian outfit, but it's just coordinated, so it's not really something you'd want to look at. And I had one other thing I wanted to say, but I do want to mention that last time I mentioned Gertie Run Mill. Well, they're moving to Virginia and they are probably not going to take their mill with them. So they're not spinning yarn now. They're only taking rovings, and I'm not sure how much they're taking. So if you put that on your list of things to do, you might as well scratch it, because she's basically said she's getting down to the wire now. And I guess that's it, because I can't remember the other thing. Let's see here. Oh, Lisa, you can go.
Okay. So I've been just continuing to make this 10-stitch blanket just out of my natural dyed yarn, my little bag of samplings that I have. And it's fun. And again, like Kathy was saying, something to mindlessly do. You don't have to think about it until you get to the corner where it's short rows. And I was talking before we started here, I was asking Kirsten and Gretchen if anybody had ever blocked, but while you were still working on your project, because this is kind of, I'd like to block it, and I think I can do it. So I think I'm just going to do it as an experiment. Has anybody tried that, blocking while you're still working on a project?
I have, and you know what? As you start working on it again, it all kind of collapses. You might as well block at the end. And I have several weighted blankets I've made, and I no longer block them, because when people hold them and do stuff with them, they just automatically reset to whatever they wanted to be in the first place.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I'm having fun doing this, and I on my needles also, I have my hand spun top, which I haven't worked on in a while. I have to pull it out and figure out where I am again. You guys all know about that, right? It's like I set it down and I forgot where I was. So now I have to go back and figure it all out again. So how about Rowan? What are you up to?
I've been learning about wool types, as you were saying, so that discussion was very timely for me. Thank you. And I've been practicing knitting. As a gift, I made my first sweater, which was fun. So now I have like an idea of what that is like. And I've been looking at more trying to understand what dyes are local to here, not just things that I could grow in my garden, but like that are more native to this area. So I was working with black walnuts for the first time because I couldn't find any last year. And then I just found that there was a tree in my neighborhood. So that was nice. And also lichen dyes. So I have some lichen. It's been in a little ammonia bath for like a month now. Apparently it takes a while to like see what color it will be. Hopefully it will be purple, but we shall see. Yeah, and I'd be interested if anyone's ever done that before or knows about its light fastness and stuff. But yeah, that's it for now. Lee, how about you?
Okay, can you hear me? Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I am actually in the Weavers Guild of Greater Baltimore, and I'm working with Cindy on the project. So I'm still in the carding stage. I think I just figured out we have at least 25 pounds of fleece. So we don't need that much for the project. Cindy might remember, I think we decided we needed about 3 pounds, maybe 5 pounds spun up, but we wanted the 3 different colors. So that's why we have 3 different fleeces. So they're all washed. I think mostly carded, but I'm still working on my batch, and then we're going to start spinning. And so from my standpoint, I'm a spinner and a weaver, and I've always wanted to weave with my hand spun. And now I'm getting a taste for how much effort is involved in actually making enough yarn to weave something larger than a scarf, which is about all I've managed to do in the past. So like Cindy, the spinning part should be done early next year, and then it gets handed off to the weaver. So I am planning on doing some other things, and I spent the summer doing a lot of natural dyeing. So I'm planning on taking that wool and doing, it's Shetland, so maybe trying to do some tweed yarn. And maybe doing either Fair Isle or maybe a smaller woven project, not as big as the Cape that we're planning. So, but it's really, it's fun working with a group because everybody has their own bits of information and, you know, opinions on things. So it's also trying to get, like, we're also planning on dyeing parts of it, and it's this whole like picking the weave structure, deciding what the actual garment's going to look like, what colors we might need or not need. And we're not all on the same page, but hopefully we'll get there. So I think, is that everyone? That's all. Is there anyone else left?
Marian and Kate.
Okay, so I'll go with Kate.
Thank you. Well, I'm not a spinner or a weaver, but I'm a knitter. And I have been thinking about the local yarns that I've purchased that were produced locally, but I don't know if I have enough for one specific project. I kind of used it all up on one sweater. So I'm thinking about a knitting project, and then also I'm a sewer, and it specifically hand-sewn clothing. And I'm trying to work out a way where I would feel honestly that it was from our fiber shed. And if anybody knows any locally produced woven linen, I'd love to know. So then, okay, Marian.
Hi, good to see everybody today. I have picked up a project last time when we all met. Emma Kingsley had mentioned that her neighbor had some coarse spun alpaca yarn that she wanted to have something done with it. So that got dropped off at my house. I've got now 420 yards of coarse spun alpaca yarn. And I just picked up a peg loom this last week, and I'm going to learn to do some simple weaving. It's nothing I've ever done before, but I thought this was a good opportunity to try something new. I'm still trying to plan a felting project, but that's still in the notebook pages, and that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, it's always so inspiring to hear what people are doing, and it would be great if people, is everybody here a part of our Facebook group? That's the Sustainable Cloth, the local cloth. Because we were just thinking it would be great to be posting pictures of what we're doing. I know that Kathy's is on there. I've seen Kathy's slip stitch is on that page, but the rest of us could be putting up some of what we're doing, even like the carding that you guys are doing, and eventually the spinning, because it's so great to see everybody's stuff.
Oh, can I ask one question? I'm raising beets and they're kind of under things now, so they're still growing. I went online and looked at beets and using them for dyeing and stuff, but what do you use to make sure that the color stays? Because what's listed online basically says that the color fades.
They're really,
So I
Here's
don't
what
want to
I've
invest a lot
heard.
of time in it.
if I could speak to that. I mean, they're really not light fast.
Mhm.
Like a lot of the vegetable dyes, except onion skins, if you want to call it a
Yeah.
vegetable dye. Yeah, they really just don't hold, even if you use a mordant with them. Yeah, like cabbage as well has a tendency to fade. Red cabbage is really beautiful, but it will go gray over time. And pokeberry also has a tendency to fade. We're going to be testing out the light fastness of our yeah, of our fiber shed dyed yarns, and see. We'll let you know how that goes. But yeah,
So does the black walnut do that also?
no,
No.
black walnuts are really wonderful. They hold their color. They have natural tannins. They're just a wonderful. They don't even need a mordant. They have the constituents to hold their color for a very long time. Yeah.
So we have lots of black walnut trees. The walnuts have all fallen. Do you have to collect them immediately, or can you use them at whatever stage?
Well, the dye really comes from the outer part, the hull itself, but the walnuts you could probably extract if the hull has already
It's already-
composted.
Yeah.
You can
Well, no,
you could.
it's just broken off.
Oh yeah, then just use the hulls. You can, usually there's residual on the walnut, on the inner walnut, so you could actually probably draw some dye stuff off of there too. But the hulls, yeah.
Do you mind posting a photo on the Facebook page of what the black walnut looks like after you've used it? So
We're
I
just
can
about
see
to.
it.
Yeah,
Invest my
Lisa.
time in it.
Yeah, Lisa, we're just about to post something on the Chesapeake Fiber Shed natural dye page. So, but
Okay.
we could send a link out so that
Oh, yeah.
when that goes up.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, on the webpage, the Chesapeake Fiber Shed webpage, we have a page that's called a Natural Dyer's Journal. And on there, Kirsten's been doing wonderful writing. At this point, we have, she does writing about it, and then we also give you instructions and pictures of what we've done. So far, we've had the goldenrod and the pokeweed. And coming up is the black walnuts, and then acorns. So that's what we've done so far. And yeah, I was just looking, I might have already posted a picture, but if not, I will for sure, because we got some beautiful colors.
And Rowan, sounds like you could share some too on the Facebook if you have some from your dye pots.
Yeah, I don't have Facebook, so
I was
maybe
gonna
not on
actually,
there,
I was
but-
gonna, that was one of my questions. I was curious, like how many people use Facebook, and if it's not a comfortable place, whether we wanted to talk about having a space, a different kind of space to share photographs. Because it's so wonderful to hear everybody's descriptions, but it would be really nice along the way to have just a few photos, you know, especially I
yeah.
love the description of all the work done in the group. That would be really interesting to see your process.
Well, we do have the we have the email list that I sent out yesterday that is not part of the MailChimp newsletter thing, but just the email list. And I had made everybody you know, a BCC, but I could do it, you know, send that out with everybody in the two you know, what do you call it? I'm gonna send it to everybody, and then you could post back and forth with your pictures to that group in regular email. That's another idea. Interested or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll do that. Yeah, I'll send that out early this week and suggest that people do that. And also we'll put a link to this recording as well for
Great.
the people who couldn't make it today.
Wait, I had one more thing to add. I forgot about this. I also recently met with some people that were from the Pennsylvania Flags Project. Oh, I know, I forget what it was called. I think it was Flags, but they're like people that are trying to make, I think it's just 2 people. They're trying to like get linen production back to Pennsylvania. You know, it's like, that's a lofty goal, but they're starting to do that. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of them or been in contact with them. I asked them if they were like, if they knew about this fiber shed, because it's part of the Chesapeake area, but I don't know if they did. They knew about fiber shed in general, obviously, because it was an offshoot of that. But yeah, so it's another resource. I don't know if they would have anything for like using within the next year. They're trying to like contact farmers and people that are willing to like grow it experimentally. But yeah, just throwing that out there.
Well, that would be great. If you could send us that link, that would be awesome. Then we could make
Yeah,
a
yeah.
connection with them.
Put it on the email chain.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a great meeting. Our next meeting is the day after Christmas. So it's going to be might be the same kind of thing as today. Maybe it'll be a small meeting, but I think we've been small but mighty today, haven't we? It's been a great meeting.
Yes.
And in the meantime, if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions about, you know, what you'd like to see us like have as mini programs for this, that would be great.
I have a question for next time. Does anyone have a topic they want to cover? Because several questions came up about natural dyes, and it might be nice to talk about those a little bit if maybe you and Kirsten are up for that, or others who are more familiar.
Yeah, we could
Yeah,
we could have a little natural dye talk, like / forum, and all share experiences. That would be really nice.
I would like that.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people here have lots of experience, and it doesn't matter how much experience. It's just great to share information, and yeah, that would be lovely.
Yeah. And just, you know, natural dyeing there is science to it, yes, but it is an art form because you're never going to get the exact same thing every time. And it's about, you know, being able to, you know, just go with the flow of that sometimes. And like, oh, maybe it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, but wow, isn't it cool right now? You know?
Yeah,
Well, awesome.
great.
That'd be great.
All right. So have a great December and a great holiday season. And hopefully we'll see you all on the 26th at 3 o'clock.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Take care.